everyone, and welcome back. So, we've been talking about consoles so much here recently that I thought it was actually time to take a break and to talk about PC and actually take stock of just how good things are right now. We have got more games that run better and fit more niches. We've got games that cross generations and survive the transition. We don't need to talk about next-gen upgrades on PC. We get it all baked in. We've got better hardware if we want. We've got more granular control over the systems that we use. We don't have to purchase someone else's black box. We can then buy games from more sources, often for cheaper, and that's just the start. So, in 2020, what is the state of PC gaming? That's what we're going to be doing today. Let's kick it off by talking about the thing that really does matter the most, the games. I mean, if this year is any indication of PC gaming's future, then we're in for an outright golden age. It has been so good. I mean, just to simplify it down, let's take a look at OpenCritic's top games for this year. You see, of the top 20 in 2020 so far, you can play 14 in PC, 5 of which are exclusive to PC. Now, if you own a PS4, you're also in a pretty decent state. You can actually play 13 of the top 20, 9 are multi-platform games, and 4 are exclusive. You can then only play 6 on the Switch, and a mostly different 6 if you're on the Xbox One. And in most of these cases, the PC version is the best version of those games by a long shot, especially when mods and all of that are in the picture as well. There are, of course, some exceptions to that rule, but they're few and far between. PC, yes, it's missing some of the high-profile exclusives that Sony tend to dominate with, but we're slowly getting some of them, like Death Stranding and Horizon, of course. But also, we've got great exclusives. Crusader Kings 3 got essentially perfect reviews. Half-Life Alyx, Command & Conquer Remastered to take a little bit of a different one. But then, of course, we have to remember that many of those Sony games are going to make it onto PC. Now, yes, it is unfortunate that Horizon's launch was plagued with issues, but after 2 months, it's actually got quite a lot of care and attention via the various different patches. And then, of course, when you move over to Xbox and their big exclusives, which will eventually come out, well, they're all coming to Steam, and they're all going to be on Game Pass if you don't mind the subscription model of that. So basically, the market has kind of separated, and I think that PC gaming is essentially the undisputed king right now, at least as far as access to games actually goes. Now, one of the weakest parts of being a PC gamer years ago was the lack of some of those exclusives, which is now a bit better, and of course the lack of access to the big Japanese games. But guess what? The biggest publishers are now dropping games on PC straight away. Sega released Persona 4 Golden and the Yakuza games, while Capcom are basically releasing all of their games on PC right now. It's great! Steam has actually become something of a haven for JRPGs for the last while too. It's really great. We're actually at a stage where ports as awful as the Dark Souls 1 port are actually a rare occurrence instead of, well, what we would expect. And then, of course, if modern games are not your thing, or if you perhaps dipped out of the hobby for any period of time, then you are in for a treat. It is so good. As opposed to the segregation across generations, PC games for the last, 10 to 20 years is still available. You can still play them. If you missed anything, you can just go back and buy it, and probably for extremely cheap too. And in most cases, that's going to be a far better situation than what you get on the console front. Now, I will say one thing, in a little bit of fairness, apparently the Xbox Series S and X's backwards compatibility is actually really sweet, so a thumbs up to Microsoft for that. But still, it's that thing where on PC, the fundamental architecture isn't changing. It doesn't hurt things in the same way that it does for consoles. I mean, see the Super Mario Sunshine performance on the Switch right now, or the fact that Sony say they can only have select PS4 games see improvements on the PS5. Of course, on PC, what happens? You pop a new graphics card in, bam, your entire games library runs great, runs better. Is that not so good? And then, hey, on remasters on PC, we're pretty much used to launch discounts for previous owners or free upgrades as a thing. That's incredible, and not something the console gamers, unfortunately, get by default. It's only now that they're becoming happy with free upgrades to next gen, and that's an issue when companies don't do it. But of course, in PC, we've never had to think about that. It's just been one version. Simple as that. And then, there's even abandonware. Can't get that in consoles. Recently, I played Freelancer, a game from 2003. It's an absolute 7 out of 10, but it's one of those 7 out of 10s that I absolutely love. Really cool game. I love Freelancer. Guess what? It was just on the Abandonware website. I downloaded it, I put on a community patch to fix it, and bam, it was there. This is a game that was literally abandoned by its publisher, and you can just go and grab it. There's so many games like that. It's absolutely incredible. And of course, the sad thing for other platforms, and this is truly sad from a sort of games preservation perspective, whenever they're abandoned, well, the publishers have got all the cards. Those games are gone. I mean, Scott Pilgrim was one of the best examples of this. It was actually so badly missed that the PS3 emulation community got it running online and on PC, while Ubisoft were just totally silent on the issue. Again, it's just one of the great things of being on a more open platform. And then, of course, there's indies. We should all know the deal with PC indies, of course. They usually come to PC first, or exclusively, and they cost quite a bit less than the largest games out there. I mean, some of the best games of all time have been indie games released on the PC for dirt cheap. I mean, a good example that you probably have not heard of, Lisa the Painful. It's an absolutely remarkable experience, exclusive to PC, and it's $10. That's like less than 1 and a bit Subway orders. Is that not ridiculous? And yeah, it might not look or play like a AAA game, but it's $10 for a grueling experience and a compelling story. That's just such a steal. The barrier to publishing is just so low that stuff like this can happen. It's incredible. And even, cheaper and smaller than indies, there are so many games that just kind of exist somehow that you can pick up for free. I mean, they might not be groundbreaking, but there are so many games on itch, that come out of weekend game jams or just strange bursts of creativity that struck some person at some point that you can just go and get. And I think so many PC gamers, they don't really investigate that or take a look. And you know what? If you actually do, you can be really surprised at some of the incredible, maybe free or pay what you like experiences that are out there. Basically, the entire gaming world is your oyster on PC. It's bloody great. And I mean, what I wanted to do with this video is just really call out to people if that's the case. You can go onto it, you can go onto Abandonware, you can go and find some of these crazy niche indies, and just wait until we talk about Daddy Bezos' free games and the situation where you probably own so many games right now that you don't even know about because of the various subscription services you have and have probably forgotten about. Before we do that though, hardware. There is some stuff to talk about with hardware, and really it's something that we just have a bit of a leg up on the consoles in some ways. Now, in fairness to the consoles, they can do super specific stuff. They can have a lockdown platform that does allow for a lot of optimization. I mean, hey, what Sony can pull off graphically in the hardware that they're running on, hats off to them. It's pretty sweet. But the last while has been so insane for PC hardware. I mean, Zen 2, that absolutely put a fire under the CPU market, ending Intel's long reign of expensive but marginal upgrades. Just look at AMD's stock price over the last while. Incredible. Of course, we moved to DDR4 RAM, right? That's pretty sweet. We get those faster memory speeds. SSDs, that's another big thing these days. They've been in an arms race for speed and capacity for quite a while. Now, we've got PCIe 4 motherboards, and it seems like every month or so, there is a new fastest SSD in the market. And this is probably stuff, unless you're really paying attention to hardware, even if you're a PC gamer, you probably don't know this. Now, the PS5's raw SSD speed is 5.5 gigabytes per second, but combine that with their compression hardware, which is so cool, by the way, they can transfer 9 gigs a second of data. That's incredible as an achievement. And back in March when that was announced, it seemed insane. The fastest we had manufacturers even talk about with, PC was like 5 gigabytes a second raw. But only 6 months later, Sabrent have actually announced a drive that has a 7 gigabytes per second read speed and 6.8 gigabytes per second write speeds. I mean, my God, that's absolutely insane. And that's only 6 months after the PS5 release. What will that be like in 3 years? I mean, we've basically just broken free of a plateau, and we're just going to keep on climbing and climbing and climbing, and the prices are just going to go down and down and down as time goes on. The pace of progress is just so exciting. And to top that all off, and even though there have been some issues, we do seem to have a bit of a graphical sort of revolution, right? The RTX 3000 series really is giving extremely high-end performance for, I think, relatively speaking overall, not that much money. $500 is the cost of a Series X. We must admit that, but the $500 3070 promises better performance in many cases than the $1,200 2080 Ti from 2 years ago. And that stuff, I do believe, does actually scale into the lower end of the graphics cards. I mean, that is the card for like, what, 1440p at 60 plus FPS, and, judging by benchmarks and stuff, it can really hold its own at 4K. Not that 4K native rendering is even that important these days, because NVIDIA's DLSS, which is their sort of AI upscaling feature, is bonkers. You've got to watch Digital Foundry's coverage over it. I mean, you're getting better visuals and a higher frame rate at the same time. Spooky magic, very cool. Something to be genuinely thrilled about as an enthusiast of games and hardware. That stuff is so cool. Basically, right, for proper high-end gaming, a 3070 is such an extremely strong option that really seems like it will last for a very, very long time. And I suppose then just wait for the 3060, and I would really hope something like, a 3050 Ti. If we can just get another card on that architecture that's kind of giving us some of that remember the 750 Ti, that price to performance ratio, then man, it would be really sweet. And I know we've been talking about expensive hardware in this video. What I want to do at some point is a Series X or maybe slightly more expensive PC build, and really just trying to dive into what budget PC gaming is like, because yeah, if you can't afford a 3070, I still think that PC in many ways is the place to be because of the cost savings you get just by being in PC and having the various different storefronts, but also just the amount of free games and incredible experiences you can get for not that much money. So yes, while the consoles will always be cheaper options because, economies of scale making the same box over and over again, and of course, it's a platform-centric business model and they're sold at a loss. I mean, let's just run a quick comparison here. If you want a decently future-proofed gaming PC, excluding accessories, you're maybe looking at $1,000 to $1,200. That is a lot of money. There's no beating around the bush there. Yes, that is a lot more expensive than purchasing a console, but also you are getting a PC that you can use for other things, including your job, which is something we should remember here. Now, it's also, it's a PC. It's a lot more versatile than a console. We've talked about a lot about that in terms of the accessibility to games and things like that. You just have more flexibility there versus consoles. And then also, if you're a really avid gamer and you plan on playing games for the length of a console generation on that machine, even if it costs $1,300 or $1,200, you might actually end up saving money in the long run, because purely just the difference in the cost of games between the platforms. I mean, let's just talk about our favorite topic when it comes to saving money, game stores. Let's talk about the PC gaming ecosystem. You know what? Having loads of launchers can be a real pain in the ass, but it also means competition. We've got Steam, Epic, GOG, Amazon's Prime Gaming, Xbox Game Pass, EA Play, Uplay, and way more. I mean, this list immediately speaks to, yes, an issue with the launchers and the various different platforms, but of course you then can look at it as a whole bunch of choices that are competing with each other. Being a PC gamer means that you can find yourself with, easily more games than time, and often not for a lot of money, because one of the ways this bunch competes with each other is just by throwing free stuff at you. Let's just take an anecdote from The Office, right? Matt, who led this video, by the way, Matt saw a 70% sale on Fury on Steam. Got excited, it was down to $5, he thought he was going to get it, and just before clicking that buy button, he mumbled, "Hang on a sec," and guess what he found when he looked at GOG Galaxy? Oh, turns out Jeff Bezos had given him a copy of the game for free via Twitch Prime Gaming a few months ago, so already owned it. There are so many free games that Matt has, specifically, that he can't remember what ones he's got for free. I mean, as an aside, there was another funny thing from The Office when we were looking through GOG Galaxy and just reminiscing about things. Matt's got access to 3 copies of The Messenger. He purchased one on Switch at launch, he's got another one that he owns via Prime Gaming, and another one that is perpetually on Game Pass. I mean, basically, right, these corporations are pumping so much money in their efforts to capture the gaming market that if you just sit there on PC and you sort of are on the right services and just sort of sit back there, you just get so many dollars worth of games. I mean, Epic are almost throwing so many free games at me that the notifications piss me off. It's that wild. And while ownership of games is important to a lot of us, I mean, the option to hop into Game Pass and play a tremendous number of games for $10 a month is insane, especially now that that's also going to be including EA Play. I'd say, instead of replacing the current model of game ownership, the way that I kind of consider it is kind of like a really big rental program. And I think when you see it like that, it feels pretty good. I mean, imagine as a kid having a unlimited rental option for $10 a month, or, the UK equivalent, from Blockbuster for the Americans or Extravision for us in the UK. I mean, wow, what would that have been like as a kid? How exciting. And then the other side of the whole pay monthly and get games thing is Prime Gaming. And I think most of us have used, Amazon Prime in our lives, right? A lot of us just happen to be on it for the deliveries and all of that. And if you're on that, I mean, take a look, because Prime Gaming just is flinging so many free games at you. It's wild. I mean, Matt is a regular Twitch viewer, and he always sees the notifications just pop up on his screen to claim this game for free, that game for free. I mean, this on screen is his library from being subbed to Prime for a few years. That's a lot of video game. A lot of video game. Now, sure, is it all AAA games? No, it's mostly not AAA games, absolutely. But some of them are little small stellar experiences that are really worth it. So if you're into exploring smaller, interesting games, it is an incredible value. And to be honest, if you fall into PC gaming, you'll probably want next day delivery on all of your, mechanical keyboards and mouse anyway, right? So I think most people have got Amazon Prime for, one reason or another. And if that is the case, then you just have a whole bunch of games if you just bother to claim them whenever the notifications pop up on Twitch. It's wild. So that's the recurrent payment sort of subscription side of PC gaming. What about if you want to buy stuff, right? Well, once more, the world is your oyster. I mean, it's so good. Now, obviously, you can't talk about PC gaming without talking about Steam. There are hundreds of games released regularly there, and that's kind of a positive and a negative. There is an insane amount of shovelware going on there. We all do know that. Sure, if you've seen Jim Sterling's channel at any point in time, he'd do those fun looks at the Greenlight games. Sometimes you get a really funny meme out of them. That's all sort of good fun. But really, there are just a lot of games. A lot of those are great. There's also extremely deep discounts multiple times a year. And I don't think this needs to be explained either. But, Steam, it's known for its regular sales on most games. Now, that stuff is largely up to the publisher, so many games do exist at full price for years, but the culture of the Steam sale does exist, and then all the stores have got competition, so there's more sales in general. You'll generally find way better deals there versus being, say, on PlayStation or Xbox and only being limited to their stores. And then, of course, on the customer service side, Steam have got their, automatic under 2-hour refund policy within 2 weeks. That's pretty great. And they often also will make exceptions whenever a game releases in a buggy or a broken state. That's pretty sweet. I mean, there's so many games it can be hard to choose, and that's where a little bit of Steam actually begins to start justifying its pretty steep, by default, 30% cut on the platform, because once Steam has actually got a glimpse of what kind of player you are, it can bombard you with recommendations of games that you'll love. I mean, seriously, the interactive recommender, we've all went through it at the office, and it's spookily good. I mean, if you want to feel a mounting dread that there are more games to play than you'll ever have time to play, spend 10 minutes with the interactive recommendation tool, and you'll be shocked. There'll be so many games you'll have never heard of. And then, of course, we've got features like curators. We've got the user reviews, which are the best in the business at Steam. And I mean, it's just a great situation. Then there's everything else. You've got Big Picture. You've got Steam VR, which is incredible and a great thing for the industry. You've got Steam's very own input mapper, which is incredible. So you can throw almost any controller at any game and you'll just have it work. Man, what a great time to be existing in gaming, isn't it? Now, that said, we do have to stop for a bit of a second and talk about a particular store with significantly fewer features, and that is the Epic Games Store. It still is contentious, and rightly so. I mean, Epic made a lot of enemies upon their entry into the market, and they do continue to do so with every single exclusive that they grab. But Epic are definitely here to stay, right? They certainly are. And despite approaching its second birthday, well, they're here to stay, and they still have a lot less features than Steam do. I mean, its promised cloud save feature is technically there, and definitely not reliable. That's a bit weird. And, when they poach the exclusives, it's really frustrating, but You know, they do some things that make up for that a bit for some consumers. I mean, the store's not a great experience, but they offer decent pricing sometimes, and their super aggressive mega sales are insane. I mean, they just lop the price off so many games and then pay the difference to the devs so that they don't lose a penny. That's wild. There are so many deals there. And I suppose they're not as much of an antagonist or villain of the industry in terms of how they're operating now, at least in the store. They're kind of quietly trucking along. And then also, you do have to wonder, like, are there projects that would not have been viable or wouldn't have existed if not for the big exclusivity commitment? I mean, who knows? Like Tony Hawk Pro Skater, that happened. Were there conversations between Activision and Epic that led to the, things appearing for that? Who the hell knows? But certainly Epic guaranteeing revenue, I mean, that might be the part of why some games even exist. Basically, I think that Epic's cash overall is doing more harm than good, but in a way that's specifically annoying to a lot of core gamers, myself included. But hey, look, what is it? It's competition, and that is a good thing. Then also, we've got GOG, right? GOG Galaxy 2.0 is incredible as a launcher, and GOG really are a blessing to PC gamers, I think. I mean, you can buy games over there completely DRM-free, and I mean, they're just likely to work on all your computers for years, not having to be tied to some sort of platform or, DRM system that you got to sign into. And that's just not possible on, well, just about any other platform digitally, and of course, physical media on consoles has, that's great, but it does have to rely sometimes on out-of-production hardware or, backwards compatibility being rough. So what GOG do is great. And while it might not be the best place to buy games sometimes, it's getting more and more love, especially with GOG Galaxy being such a good launcher and now being a launcher that actually supports making purchases on other storefronts. So that's incredible. It's more competition. I mean, this stuff is so exciting. And of course, that's not it. I mean, this is just a brief overview of why PC gaming is so great. There's, of course, third-party resellers like Greenman Gaming and Humble who are there to offer some price competition. There is also the black flag, to, when push comes to shove there. And I think I more bring up raising the black flag in the context of emulation, which is a really big part of PC gaming that can help with the preservation of old games and hardware. I mean, there's no need to buy, say, a price-inflated copy of the original Nier and a PS3 on eBay when it turns out a bunch of people just did it on an emulator. And I suppose that's a bit tricky because is it morally okay to run the emulation in PC if you own the game? What's going on there? It's a gray area, but it certainly is something the PC gamers can do, and many would consider that to be a pro. I mean, there's also just so many free games, like literally free ones. Like there's the free-to-play market, which is bigger in PC. There's itch, again. So, simply put, as a PC gamer, you've got access to so many incredible free experiences and so many reliably cheaper experiences as well. That stuff's great. But you know what? The greatness does not end because we're going to mop this video up with the miscellaneous benefits of PC. So, what about accessories? You can have multiple monitors, whatever price point you want, whatever configuration you want. You can run 240 FPS, 1080p. You could do 4K 60, whatever the hell you want. PC's the way to do that. You've got so many different peripherals. I mean, do you want an incredible sim rig for a racing game? Keyboards, mice, controllers of any variety, HOTAS setups, VR headsets, whatever the hell you want. It is so good. I mean, as well, this whole whatever you like thing extends to software. So there's borderless gaming for custom window sizes and setups. You've got auto hotkey to macro your games. You've got trainers and cheats you can just apply to single player games if there's a grind you really don't like. You can just do that. You can picture-in-picture Netflix and YouTube over your game if you only have one monitor. I mean, hey, you can just put that, Netflix window over the chat box in your MMO because, hey, you're probably not reading the chat anyway. You can use Discord or whatever other VoIP thing you want during games without having to fiddle around with a second device. Hey, you can also use Steam Play Together, another great thing about Steam, to do couch co-op in PC or Parsec. This is great. I mean, there are so many as well, just like small experimental things that really just start to add up over time. I mean, even for me, I've got my main monitor here, then I've got a portrait one beside me, and I've used Fancy Toys by Windows. There's a Power Toys, whatever it's called. No, it's the Fancy Zones in Power Toys to create a custom sort of window placements. You just do that in PC. It's great. I mean, my God, we live in such a great time for gaming. So, to close this video off, this is just a love letter to PC gaming about how it's just, it's fucking great. PC gaming is incredible. And a lot of why this video exists is because if you feel like, much of us do in the office, that this is just such an incredible time for gaming, and you maybe have some friends who, maybe a bit more sort of stuck in the old console shackles. I mean, man, hopefully this video is going to help convince some people. I mean, I understand as well that there is the pricing thing. I would say that if you get a sort of budget but decently future okay PC gaming rig, then I would say that because of the number of freebies and the sales and the discounts and the breadth of experience, and also the fact that it is a more, you could say, like a more flexible piece of hardware, I actually do think that the lifetime cost of ownership of PC gaming is, is lower. Now, that is, of course, provided you don't, go get drunk and spend, like, I don't know, 100 quid in World's Orbs in League of Legends or something like that. But that aside, you can really do PC gaming pretty damn well on a budget. So, look, there you go. It's been 27 minutes of recording. PC game is absolutely bloody brilliant. This is such a great time to be alive and be in gaming. And I know there's a lot of negative sort of stories and stuff going on in the news. But you know what? We've been doing so many of these videos covering the consoles and how the Xbox is doing this, the PS5 is doing that, and in fairness, those things are all really cool. But, it's time to do a PC video. Talk about that. That's what we've done. I hope you enjoyed it. And, I mean, if you feel like me, then this video was probably just, probably not really worth you watching, because you probably know all this already. But I do think that the more we actually just champion the things we love, then I think the hope there is that the people who also love those things will also do the same, and we'll all just be better. So yeah, PC game is great. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think about things. What are the cool stuff you've done, on your PC lately? Tell me down below. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.